So you find out you failed your inspection. I'm going to give you a couple of good pointers on some things that are just so simple and that just get on everybody's nerves when they fail an inspection, when it's something so simple as this. And a lot of times it's just some basic stuff that it's a miscommunication between people. I believe that arc fault circuit interrupters are one of the safest and most effective tools in the last 20 years to come along, especially for residential construction. Now, everybody complains about them because it's new. We always don't like something that's new, now do we? But they prevent electrical fires by detecting dangerous low-level arcing. Their high sensitivity does cause frustration and causes nuisance trips sometimes. The most common problem of a nuisance trip is where the breaker cuts power due to a harmless electrical noise rather than a real safety hazard. And then people get upset and they go and change things after the final inspection. A professional electrician will not allow this to happen. In the NEC and the IRC, where branch circuit wiring is modified, replaced, or extended in any area specified in section E3902.20, the branch circuit shall be protected by one of the following: a combination type AFCI located at the origin of the branch circuit, or a listed outlet branch circuit type AFCI located at the first receptacle outlet of the existing branch circuit. There is a very important exception. The exception applies here. AFCI protection shall not be required where the extension of the existing branch circuit conductors is not more than 6 feet and does not include any additional outlets or devices other than the splicing device. There are several factors that can cause nuisance trips with AFCI, but one thing I want you to consider is just how intricate this device is. I mean, it's really amazing, and I have a cutaway version here in this photograph for you to look at, and I wish you could actually hold it in your hands. It's quite unique, but one of the big things we see is usually incompatible appliances. We had one case where a woman was very upset because the AFCI kept tripping and found out that the problem was not with anything that was new that was installed in the home. It was with the antique lamps that she had brought into her living room. Once they were rewired, everything worked great. So there's all kinds of different problems that can cause to an AFCI nuisance trip, and they have to be investigated very closely. In residential renovation and remodeling projects, you're going to find that quite often there is a shared neutral on the circuit. So therefore, the problem becomes that a single pole AFCI will not work on the multi-wire branch circuit. To meet the latest version of the NEC, if AFCI protection is required on the shared neutral circuits being wired, you will be unable to use a single pole AFCI breaker because it requires a dedicated conductor for the line and the neutral. Now, the solutions can be many, but 3 solutions I'm going to offer here today are: run a new circuit with its own neutral, use a 2-pole AFCI, or use an AFCI without ground fault protection. In the 2020 NEC and the companion 21 IRC, a single volume allowance can be used for up to 4 equipment grounding conductors entering the box, and any more than that will each be assigned a quarter volume allowance based on the largest equipment grounding conductor or equipment bonding conductor entering the box. This is an important change that needs to be noted when doing box fill calculations. This code change is meant to address the overcrowding that can occur in a box, especially with some of the newer electronic type switching devices. It's important to remember that equipment grounding conductors that do not leave the box, such as the pigtails, are not counted. Believe it or not, we still see this as inspectors out in the field. Someone will put a box under the kitchen cabinet and they will have the receptacle in the face-up position. This is specifically addressed in the National Electrical Code and in the IRC. Receptacles shall not be installed in a face-up position under sinks. It just makes you wonder why you even have to tell people something like this. But this is a code issue that gets written up, and it gets written up quite a lot. So an issue we're seeing in these large residential bathrooms nowadays is either the tub or the shower that's located closer than 3 feet to a receptacle. The code now requires that that receptacle be at least 3 feet away. This comes into play specifically, I've seen, when you have these large clawfoot type tubs or soaker tubs that people like to have, and they like to have a receptacle nearby. Also, as you can see in this photograph, we have a large shower area there that is going to have no doors, no glazing separating, that will keep the receptacle from being 3 feet away. So in this case, in the photograph you're seeing, that receptacle will have to be relocated. So the question becomes, what is a mudroom? The 2021 IRC in E3902.10 and the companion of the 2020 NEC makes a specific requirement that mudrooms should be supplied with GFCI receptacles to protect personnel. Now let's just take an example from the commentary. A mudroom with access directly from the outdoors or a pet bathing and grooming area might be considered a wet or damp area, therefore a mudroom. Although there may be a sink in these areas and the code already requires GFCI protection for receptacles within 6 feet of a sink, there might be a receptacle that's further away than 6 feet from the sink, but still considered part of the wet or damp area. Such factors will need to be evaluated by the building official in determining the level of hazard to occupants of the building. So this is something to consider when you're doing your layout in your residential construction. A significant change in the 2023 NEC and the companion IRC has occurred concerning convenience receptacles in kitchens. This is both the countertop, peninsula, and islands. They're no longer going to permit receptacles to be allowed on the side of these cabinets. So this is a big change. The change came about as a result of a recommendation from the Consumer Product Safety Commission, where they showed data that between 1991 and 2020, an estimated 9,700 people, many of them children, were treated in the United States because of burns and other injuries after pulling or running into power cords plugged into receptacles installed below the island or the peninsula or the kitchen work surface. So this is a big change that's come about in the code, and it needs to be considered during your construction. This was a code change in the residential code that I really don't understand why we didn't do this a long time ago. It simply makes sense. Water and electricity never mix. If you think about a residential dishwasher, it's kind of a no-brainer. But GFCI protection is now required for the outlets that supply dishwashers installed in dwelling units. Another requirement concerning the dishwasher is also that the receptacle for that dishwasher is not permitted to be behind the dishwasher. It must be in the cabinet or in an accessible location, especially if it's going to be an SOR cord type installation. We're seeing that folks are going down and buying these cheap receptacles down at the big box stores to plug in their electric vehicles. You need to get the right type of device designed for its use. What's happening here is these devices are being plugged in and the plug's taken out time and time again, and they're not designed that way. They're kind of a one-shot deal. So don't be using these. Make sure you get the right device. Get a NEMA 1450 that's designed for the EV that you're going to use. If not, you're going to have a house fire that you don't want. And you can see from this device, it's actually melted from its use. So that concludes this video. We've got a whole host of other videos. I ask you to go to the site and look over them. There's quite a few there for you to learn from. Please like and subscribe. We need to go over all this with you as much as we can. And let's try to avoid unnecessary failed inspections on the site. And that saves everybody time and money and a little bit of aggravation. There are some that just don't believe that knob and tube wiring is even considered in the code, but it is. It's in the National Electric Code. Now, no new knob and tube wiring can be run, but if you have existing knob and tube in a home, especially a renovation or remodel project, and you're running Romex or NM cable and trying to make a connection to continue a circuit or to feed an area that circuit has to feed, the requirements are that the connection between the NM and the knob and tube occur inside a UL approved junction box. There are specific requirements that each conductor must enter separately into the box with proper connections, and all splices must occur inside the UL box. Also, the loom of the knob and tube must extend at least 1/4 of an inch inside the box.